Welcome back to the SitRep. Well, welcome to for the first time. If you happen to be joining us for the first time, which occasionally happens, somebody stumbles across this somewhere on the interwebs. Sorry, just adjust my camera there for those of you on YouTube. So welcome, whether you're watching this on YouTube, on Instagram, or listening to the podcast, wherever you feel like downloading your podcast from. Thanks for joining me. This is the SitRep, or the Situation Report, where I go through news stories from the past 24, or in this case, 72 hours. There's a lot of them. And talk about it from the perspective of prepping, i.e. Disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness, just generally how to be better prepared for what's coming in the future. If you haven't, feel free to hit the like button or even the subscribe button, depending on what platform you're on, and we'll help out that algorithm thingy, mabob. That'd be grand if you could. But yes, I didn't do a SitRep over the weekend. Got tied up doing other stuff, because I do other stuff occasionally. And now, as punishment for me living a life, I now have a torrent of news stories to wade my way through. So I cut a lot of them away today, but we've got a whole heap, so I'll jump into it today and get things kicking. First off, this one's just a bit of a general one that I came across, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's not, I mean, the information is coming out of the US, I guess, but it's an international organization, being an insurance company. Insurance companies have been looking at what's been happening in the world recently. I find insurance companies and the kind of metadata that comes out of insurance investigations and things like that fascinating, because they quite often deal with what is, not what we'd like to be. So this one I found quite interesting. Quote, "That should have went down. Life insurance companies across the board see staggering increases in death benefit payouts." So insurance companies at the moment this year are seeing all these payouts for death benefits. And obviously that's concerning them, because it costs them a lot of money. They don't want to do that. The way insurance companies want to work is they want to take your money and then not necessarily pay out on it. It's essentially you betting that something's going to go wrong in your life. I don't particularly like insurance in that form. I think there are other better ways to insure yourself. So insurance companies, they had a bit of a spike of deaths and death payouts in sort of 2020, 2021, due to a little thing, some disease that was kicking around the earth at the time. The funk, the cooties, COVID. Then they said, well, 2022, this is obviously going to take a sharp decline, because, you know, we've got vaccinations and people become immune to it, blah, blah, blah. That hasn't happened. That hasn't happened at all. 1 billion over the year where we had the supposed death pandemic. Our savior cure comes in. Now 1 billion more is being paid out than even that year. So what they're trying to say there, in a really weirdly spoken sentence, is they paid out $1 billion in basically death insurance, or life insurance, but, you know, people dying. They had to pay $1 billion during the pandemic. They expected it in 2022 to go down. It hasn't. It's doubled. More people are dying now. That's odd. Hey, the Commie Hunter on YouTube. How you going? So that one just piqued my interest first thing. Well, that was a couple of days ago now that I saw that, but that was really quite interesting. I thought I'd lead off with that. All right, let's jump into sort of our neck of the woods now. First off, I'm going to talk about a story that was sent to me via one of my sources on Instagram, who is keeping quite a close eye on many things throughout Europe, but especially on NATO's movements. Germany is really turning their eye down to the Indo-Pacific. So this one here from a channel called 49 Security in Germany. is talking about bringing the Indo-Pacific into Germany's security strategy. So Germany has been, for those who don't know, historically, being in the last sort of 10, 15 years, has just really been shrinking their army down, really tightening the budget on the army and pretty much destroying their army. In fact, it's at the point where they're kind of subtly the laughing stock of NATO, because they're easily probably the biggest GDP, the biggest earner, so that they've got the most money in Germany, and yet what they actually contribute to NATO is minuscule. It's tiny. Their army is a joke. So they've turned that around in the past couple of months. They've announced a whole heap of spending that they're pumping into their military forces, and more to come. And now they're starting to branch out. So what they're looking at is really shifting their focus down to the Indo-Pacific. They've got certain interests down in this neck of the woods, let me put it that way. One of them being that they need to sell their highly technical manufactured goods to someone. And so that's essentially what they're looking at down here in this neck of the woods, making sure that things are nice and secure down here. This could be, portending more interaction from European forces down in this neck of the woods. And we've already heard France has already said they're going to do it. Obviously, US has said they're going to do it. Not that they're European, but they are part of NATO. If you haven't seen, if you can't figure out where this is all going, these are NATO countries that are going to start pumping forces down into this area. Thinking about what's been happening with China, Article 5, NATO. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. This could be that sort of thing that we're seeing this these war lines, or the war drums really are beating in my ears. That's what I'm hearing. War drums beating. We're seeing more European interaction down in this part of the world. And if China and any of NATO members are going to have a bit of friction, rub up against each other, then write that day up in the history books as the beginning of World War III, as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's talk about China. China is preparing to go to war. Last month, a Chinese entrepreneur making medical equipment for consumers told me, this is the reporter of this particular article on Zero Hedge, told me that local officials have demanded he convert his production lines in China so that they could turn out items for the military. Interesting. Communist Party Carter, he said, were issuing similar orders to other manufacturers. That's interesting in of itself. Okay, so the CCP is putting out the word to manufacturers within China, which is the world's factory. Like, they do manufacture most of the stuff. They're saying, hey, you need to be able to at least quickly gear up to make military spec stuff, to pump stuff out for our military. That's interesting. The second interesting part about that is that we know about it. So China is making zero effort to hide this. They are very overt about it, because this sort of thing they could do, and they could not let anyone know, but they're not doing that at all. They are putting the word out. Hey, everyone in China, we might have to actually start doing the war effort. So that's quite interesting. Why are they doing that? Maybe it's a veiled threat to the West to say, hey, we're prepared to do this and we are gearing up towards it. Or maybe they actually don't give a shit. They're like, yeah, all right, we're going to go to war. We know this is going to happen. And that's kind of my take on it. They have, for a very long time, talked about how they are going to take back Taiwan. They're going to reunify Taiwan. They haven't, sat there and told the world that no, we won't do it, and then started sneaking around and planting the seeds and start doing things. They're very, very overt about this. They know if and when they take Taiwan, there will be a reaction from the West, and they are preparing themselves for that reaction. Also in news around Taiwan, that China will be conducting live fire drills in the East China Sea for about 14 hours starting today. So again, they're cruising out there with their naval might and firing off rockets. Interesting stuff happening down in this neck of the woods. China, also a couple of weather effects, opposing weather effects in China. It's a big place, but this still caught my eye because they're kind of opposing effects. 17 dead and 17 missing in China flash floods in the Qinghai province, which was hit with torrential rain. Back that up with China issued its first drought emergency this year as scorching temperatures dry up areas of the Yangtze River and put pressure on the power grid while the country battles the record-breaking heat wave. Already, they've had problems with electricity generation. This heat wave's not making it any better. And, just highlight again these weather effects. We've got floods in one part of the country. We've got drought in another part of the country. This, I'm going to keep talking about this. Weather effects are something that we all need to prepare for. We all need to actually really factor that into our preps. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're prepping for, I don't care if you're prepping for zombie apocalypse or like Mad Max scenarios or whatever, BS you think is going to happen. What is going to happen is weather effects. They're going to become more frequent, more intense. So that's something we're going to have to think about and going to have to deal with moving forward into the future. All right, let's jump over to Central Asia or South Central Asia, sort of. Pakistan. Pakistan is on the verge of blowing up right now. This is unfolding. I was just looking at these stories just before I jumped on, and it is fascinating to follow the thread of this. And I haven't, as of yet, seen anything on mainstream media about it, which is, again, fascinating, conspicuous in its absence, I will say. So, for those who don't know the background, just a quick little snapshot of it. The PM there, President? I think it's PM. Pretty sure it's a PM. Yeah, it's PM. Prime Minister Imran Khan got ousted. A government got put in. Now, a lot of people started saying within Pakistan that this government was put in from Western influences, Western forces, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of pro-Imran Khan people started rioting on the streets and started protesting on the streets, and they turned into riots and they marched on the Capitol and all this sort of stuff. This has been going on for weeks now. Tie in with this all the other effects that Pakistan's feeling because they are following kind of not quite the exact route, but they're kind of going the way of Sri Lanka as well at the moment, where they're in a state of almost collapse in that country. Things are not looking good. And civil unrest is going to happen in that country. Now, overnight, the government came out and did a number of things, one after the other. The first one they did was designate Imran Khan as a terrorist and logged him as such on whatever the terrorist organization is. They then sent forces out to his house to arrest him. Now, they didn't get into the house because there was a lot of people hanging around there because they heard news that he'd just been designated as a terrorist. So a whole heap of people went out there, supporters and such what, went out there and surrounded his house. So there's been this to and fro, this unfolding event where they're like, is he even home? Is he not there? He posted a photo of him allegedly in the home at about 2 a.m. An insider leaked that the police forces were going to go in under the cover of darkness at night, which is a very standard thing for law enforcement and military forces to do. As of yet, they have not moved on him that I know of. But there have been a lot of threats that have come out from the Imran Khan supporter sides. This one here is from Ali Amin Khan, Gandapur, who's a party member from Imran Khan's party. It's not Twitter. If Imran Khan is arrested by the imported government, we will take over Islamabad. And my message to police is that don't be part of this political war anymore. Otherwise, deal you as PDM workers, not police anymore. Not sure what that means, but essentially what he's saying is you will not be seen as police anymore. You will be seen as puppet government workers. And he's basically calling for violence here. So what he's saying is if Imran Khan is arrested tonight, that they will march on Islamabad. And huge crowds are forming up. they've blockaded the roads, they've set fires, like burning tires and things like that. So it is right on the cusp of massive civil unrest right now in Islamabad. I'll be watching this over the course of the day. This is something super interesting, and who knows what happens from there. What kind of crackdown will happen if they do march on Islamabad? I fear to think of what would happen to those people. All right, let's jump over to the Middle East. Reports coming out of drought hitting. This one I found amusing. Droughts. Lakes are drying up all over the Middle East and beyond. I'm kind of like, how can you tell there's a drought in the Middle East? The place is a desert. It's always in drought as far as I'm concerned. But apparently they're feeling it as well. Qatar equips 15,000 CCTV cameras with facial recognition for the Football World Cup 2020, which is coming up. So they're hosting the Football World Cup 2020 in air-conditioned stadiums because it's so hot there. Love how that gets a pass. Cool. We'll have this World Cup. We'll build these huge facilities. We'll close them in. We'll air condition them for thousands of fans. That's fine. But you having a cow, no, not having that. We're killing all the cows, getting rid of the cows. People can't have cows. They're causing climate change, right? But the soccer's all right. The soccer's fine. Air-conditioned soccer is still happening. So we're okay, all right? We don't have to worry about anything in the world. Dear me. What the F is going on? Okay, let's jump over to Europe now. A lot of Europe news again. Flash floods hit Marseille after torrential rain. Again, look at the pattern that's happening here. Floods, droughts, heat waves, no water in the rivers, people getting killed, washed away in floodwaters. This is what I'm talking about. This is what we're going to experience. There's going to be more extreme weather patterns that we're going to have to be dealing with into the future. That story shouldn't be in there. Well, I guess it should. All right. This is about Venezuela, but it's actually about Europe. Venezuela, for those who don't know, Venezuela has huge oil reserves. Like they've got a massive amount of oil. What they don't have is the ability to actually refine oil anymore because they've been so mismanaged. Again, cautionary tale for all you socialists or communists out there. Have a look at Venezuela and just tell me how that went. It didn't go well. That's spoiler alert. It didn't end well, and it's not ending well now. So their socialist government, although they do have a lot of oil, no longer has the ability to refine that oil because basically they mismanaged it. They didn't put the funds into maintaining these facilities. And so they're cactus now and they're destroyed. And they've also lost all the people and the brain power that would be able to fix it, that would be able to figure this stuff out. So Venezuela has to ship their crude oil out somewhere else, usually over to Europe or something like that, get it refined and get it back to them. That's fine because they can get a good price for their crude oil. But we've got some geopolitical interventions that are happening now. So for reasons not actually overtly divulged, Venezuela is going to stop its oil shipments to Europe. Now, that's a big deal because those Venezuelan oil shipments were kind of filling the gap for the Russian oil that is no longer going into Europe. Now, if you've been following the news, you would also know that Russian forces are down in this part of the world and are interacting with Venezuela at the moment. There's actually Russians who are running military exercises down in this part of the world at the moment. And there's been some talks high-level talks between Venezuela and Moscow and Russia. So just convenient, I think. Me just as a dullard looking at the news as I am, me just a dumb knuckle-dragging idiot that I am looking at stuff going like, isn't that interesting? Russia has been told they can't sell their oil to Europe. Now they've had talks with Venezuela. Now Venezuela isn't selling their oil to Europe. That's really interesting. Stony Creek Stumpy says they shut down our last oil refinery here in New Zealand. Marsden Point, not good. Yes. I'm aware of that. I did have a discussion about that not too long ago and was talking with someone about it. Matt. I was talking with Matt about it. Yeah, not good. We're down to 2, I think, in Australia, and neither of them are working at anywhere near capacity, and they're on the decline. They're on their way out. The interesting one about New Zealand, in case you don't know this, is they not only closed it, they destroyed it. They pumped concrete into the pipes of it, so it can never be used again. Interesting. Very interesting. A time in history where I think countries should be really looking at their ability to be self-reliant, to be sustaining their own economy and sustaining their own needs. Then we have our governments doing stuff like this, where they're basically locking us in to being reliant on outside forces that can then manipulate us. It's mind-blowing what's going on in the world at the moment. So just further on this story about Venezuela, this one, again, coming out of Zero Hedge, the writing is on the wall for Europe. In terms of this coming winter, is going to get ugly. Another reason why it's going to get ugly. With natural gas imports from Russia cut by 80% through the Nord Stream 1, along with the majority of oil shipments, the EU is going to be scrambling for whatever fuel sources they can find to supply electricity and heating throughout the coming winter. 2 sources that were originally suggested as alternatives were Iran and Venezuela. Well, one of them's off the table now. And if you don't know what's happening in Iran at the moment, essentially Iran's using this as a huge bargaining chip to get their nuclear needs met. So they're going to get the nukes that they want, that they've been pushing for so long. They're going to get the green light from Europe, because they're going to be supplying Europe with oil. That's the way it goes. This, my friends, is the slow and steady march into chaos. Well, what else is happening in Europe? Germany's largest refinery slashes output due to the Rhine's low water levels. So not good stuff happening there in Germany. Germany is also risk at deindustrialization. Now, mark that word down, kiddies. Deindustrialization. That's going to be another buzzword that we're going to be getting hit with very soon, because that's where we're heading. We're heading into a deindustrialized world. If the factors continue going the way they're going, and some people are actually saying that it is now inevitable that this is going to happen, we are going to be deindustrialized. So that's what we're looking at the moment. Deindustrialization. If you don't know what that in particular actually pertains, or what it means for you as an individual, it means you doing everything yourself. It means the age of our ability to get energy that was cheap, and that's essentially what fuel, oil, electricity, all of it is. All of that stuff is representative of a human not having to work to do those things. Well, now we're going back the other way. Yeah, we're going to be deindustrialized. Do I have them actually? I do not, but some good books you might want to check out. I'll see if I can remember off the top of my head. The Ecotechnic Future by John Michael Greer. The Ecotechnic Future by John Michael Greer. The Knowledge by Lewis Dartnell. And The End is Just the Beginning by Peter Zehan. They're 3 books I highly, highly recommend that you read now. Get copies of them now, because it will start to focus your mind and start to actually show you some of the skills that we might be needing in the not too distant future as we deindustrialize. Ozfarm Living on Instagram asks, how long can oil last in a canister? Depends on what oil you're talking about. If we're talking about crude oil, it can last for quite a long time. years. If you're talking about food grade oils, then it really depends on what the oil is. But most of them actually don't last too long. So, because what we're talking about with oils is fats when it comes to food grade oils. Fats go rancid after a certain time. So you can keep olive oil or something, if you keep it in a sealed container in a cool, dark area, which is where I keep mine, you can extend out the life of it for quite some time. But there will be a point, and especially if it does have temperature fluctuations or does get exposed to light or air, that it will rapidly start to deteriorate. Yes. All right. You're not talking about food though. You're talking about crude. Chainsaw oil, like that stuff, like I don't think there's really an expiration date on chainsaw oil. Chainsaw oil is really easy going stuff, right? And you can use a lot of other alternatives to actual chainsaw oil. There's bar oil that I assume you mean bar oil for chainsaws, which is the oil that lubricates the bar of the chain. Lubricates through the bar of the chain. That stuff will last forever. You can use it. It doesn't matter that it can't go bad. If you're talking about oil for 2-stroke or 4-stroke engines, again, that's going to have a very, very long life on it. There is an expiration on it, but I don't think it actually matters. It matters from this perspective. If something gets into the oil or into the petrol or into the diesel or whatever it is, then it will have an effect on filters within your engine or within your apparatus, your machine. So that's the issue with fuels, with storing fuels, right? Is that the fuels can actually get algal blooms in them. So they can get algae that grows in them, and petrol much more so than diesel. And generally this is introduced if you've got any sort of other moisture. So if you've got a bit of water, condensation or something on the inside of the canister, then that will start to build up and you'll get some sort of growth in there. You then pour that into your engine and it clogs up filters or does undue wear and tear onto the engine. Things like oil for a chainsaw, especially for the bar, irrelevant, because that oil, what it does, for those who don't know, on a chainsaw, that you've got a petrol reservoir and you've got an oil reservoir. Now the petrol just works as the petrol, and that's actually you pre-mix that. So the stuff that you mix it with, 2-stroke oil, that will, I haven't heard, and people can please feel free to correct me if you've heard anything different. But as far as I know, is if you store it in a cool, dark place again and not exposed to light, then it should last years and years and years. Probably even donkey years. That's how long it should last. The other oil, the bar oil, totally irrelevant. Doesn't matter. It doesn't go in the engine. It just goes from its reservoir straight out onto the chain. So that was a hugely long answer to a pretty relatively simple question. What else happening in Europe? Clashes erupt as police evict refugees from camps in Athens. So we're seeing refugees starting to increase around the world. We're seeing migration patterns. And with those, always problems, always issues. Migrations cause issues. I have seen it firsthand many, many times. And I have also looked at the statistics of this. It's a horrible thing, but when people are forced to move, it doesn't work out well for anyone involved. Those people either get caught in refugee camps, and those things are horrible, pretty much 100% of the time, on varying degrees of horribleness, or they go into the community, into the actual society of where they're heading, and issues abound there. We're seeing this already. Refugee camps in Athens, police clashes. Not sure exactly what instigated it, but for me, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. 100% makes sense. What else we got? Iceland. Haven't heard from Iceland in a little while. What's happening in Iceland? You can eat on layaway now. Shop now, pay later schemes hit as people can't afford food. Yeah. Let that sink in for a second. You can't afford food. So shops are going, look, we'll give you the food and you just pay it back when you can. So then you're becoming in debt for food. This is next level stuff. When I see this, I'm just like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is a line we do not want to cross. I get it. If luxuries and things like that going in debt for, investments going into debt for, I get that. You go into debt for a car, you go into debt for a house, blah, 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 whatever. But something that you need every day to survive, food, that's a big deal. And this is how something like a rationing system is instigated. This is how it slides in. They go at first, they're like, oh, well, you can't afford food. We'll give you the food. You just pay it back when you can. Oh, there's also interest on top. Oh, what? You can't pay that back? Well, look, I tell you what, if you do exactly what we tell you to do all the time, then we will look after you. That's what the government will do. We're nice like that. All you have to do is do exactly what we tell you to do at all times. You can own this, but you can't own that. You can go here, but you can't go there. You can only leave your house at certain times. You need this jab. You need that jab. You need to do this. You can't do this. And all of a sudden, you have no freedoms. This is a pretty dangerous thing. Iceland usually does some pretty cool stuff too. Like their ability to navigate things is, I usually look at it and go like, Iceland does all right. This though is disturbing. What else we got going on? All right, let's jump over to South America now and Argentina. They're having a bit of an issue. I mean, they're having a lot of issues in Argentina that you should be aware of. One of the big ones is inflation. And inflation, surprise, surprise, is outstripping wage increases, which it is everywhere in the world at the moment. Sad to say, but not everywhere in the world at the moment has 90% inflation in a year, and that's what Argentina is experiencing at the moment. They're in a state of hyperinflation right now. So what do people do? They demonstrate. They get out in the streets and they start rallying. So that's exactly what's happening. Trade Union Federation has mobilized in Buenos Aires to demonstrate against big corporations amid the soaring cost of living. Big corporations, I guess. I think the biggest corporation you should be rallying against is the government of your country. They're the ones who have really screwed the pooch on this one. All right, let's jump to North America now. Canada. What are the Canadians up to? They've they've had a bit of a bad run of choices. Not that Australia has done any better. I will add that. But what's going on with Canada at the moment? The World Economic Forum is actively promoting digital IDs, and Canada appears to be embracing it with open arms. Interesting stuff. Digital IDs, I don't like this idea. Again, this is another form of control from governments, which I feel should have much less control. They should really not be able to affect individuals' lives like this. Disturbing stuff. US, what's happening? All of Massachusetts is now in a drought amid an alarming expansion of dry conditions in the Northeast. Not known for its dry conditions up in the Northeast there. And lastly, this is just an interesting story which doesn't really fall into any geopolitical space in particular, just everywhere. From Zero Hedge, something is looming geopolitically and we better start taking it seriously. What could that thing be? What is that something that's looming with us right now? As a result of Western governments taking collective action under the auspices of climate change agenda, we are on the cusp of something happening with ramifications that no one has ever seen before. Western governments, specifically Western Europe, North America, being US and Canada, and Australia and New Zealand, these are all some of my favorite places, are intentionally trying to lower economic activity to meet the intentional drop in energy production. I'll just read that again. Are intentionally trying to lower economic activity to meet the international drop in energy production. If you're confused by that in any way, let me just spell it out to you. Bad. that's about as simple as I can put it. Less economic activity equals bad for human beings. The thing that helps human beings, the average human being that brings people out of poverty, is economic activity. That's the way we do it. But this is all based on the World Economic Forum Build Back Better rhetoric, slogan, mind-washing campaign that every country seems to be taking on. Build back better. I'm not sure what we're building back from, or what this better is that they're doing. Anyone who says there is a reference point to determine both the short-term and long-term consequences is lying. There is no precedent for nations collectively and intentionally trying to reduce economic activity. So, we're hearing about a whole heap of stuff that's happening at the moment. We're hearing about we're slipping into recession and it's COVID's fault and it's climate change's fault and it's climate change also makes kids fat and, there's this happening, there's that happening, blah, blah, blah. It's Putin's fault. Supply chain shortages. The truth of it is, what's underpinning all of this is governments, what I have previously seen as governments' inability to act on this, or maybe ignorance to act on any of this sort of stuff, to actually implement good plans that are going to increase in economic activity and thus help people out. Well, this particular article postures that perhaps that's what they're doing on purpose. Perhaps they actually want to decrease economic activity in order to meet climate targets. Well, that's an interesting take on it. I think it's very wrong. And I think I agree with this article. That's probably why I'm talking about it, in that it's absolute insanity what they're doing here. This whole build back better idea, this whole slowing down of economies is only going to end in heartbreak and tears. And I'm not talking of us, having a bit of a harder time, maybe us being able to earn less, maybe us, paying more for veggies at the supermarket. I'm talking about hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of human beings dying of starvation. That's where this agenda is actually moving us towards at the moment. That's what we're facing at the moment. We're looking at that kind of scale of human death, destruction, and misery in our future. And this is one of the reasons why I jump on here and say this sort of stuff, that for us, we really need to grab the bull by the horns. We need to take control of our own lives and make sure that we, as much as possible, have the ability to look after ourselves in whatever way that looks like. And I always talk about food and talk about sourcing your own water and having your own shelter and things like that, and your own security as well. All these sort of facets are important. These are the sorts of things we need to start doing. These are the sorts of things we need to start encouraging with each other and building a community around us and interacting community to community. That's the future that I see, hopefully, for us. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me. A little bit of a longer one. Lots of news stories, obviously, that I missed over the weekend. So thought I'd do a little bit of an extended one. I hope that you are all doing well. I hope you're all getting the ability to get out in the garden and do some of that stuff. Maybe even getting some stores, some food preps, a little bit of a deeper pantry kicking this week. Yes, I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, with another one of these. So until then, as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them through to me. I would really appreciate it. But stay safe, keep your eyes open, and until next time, I will say Semper Paratus.